When I go to the top and I get back down to left arm parallel, and we look at the actual angle of the shaft, I think there's two ways to look at this. One would be where the butt of the club points relative to the ball target line. If I have a shallow shaft, the butt of the club should point right on the ball target line or just slightly outside of the ball target line. Whereas a steep shaft, the butt of the club would point too far inside. Why you don't want a steep shaft here is because when the shaft gets steep like this, you're gonna have to compromise your body motions to shallow that out. Usually that means early extension, no rotation, right? Lots of different tilting at the bottom, low point control issues, consistency issues. So when we get the shaft on this angle where it points right at the baseline, we've got, or even slightly below that, even so the outside the baseline, we've got complete freedom to have perfect body motions through impact, which we all want. I want to talk to you today about live view golf. Now you guys hear me say all the time that you need feedback when you're practicing. You need to know if you're actually doing what you're trying to do, and the best way to give yourself feedback ultimately is video. And not only is video the best way to give yourself feedback, but being able to see yourself simultaneously as you're doing a movement is the best form of video feedback. It's the best way I've seen to make changes in your swing and be able to correlate the differences between your feels and your reels. Live view is super easy to use and set up. Simply set it up behind or in front of you. You connect it with your iPad or phone, pop that on the ground. You can actually do your practice, see yourself as you're doing it, the best way to expedite your process. I encourage you guys to check out Live View Golf. We'll put a link in the description down below with a coupon code. Hey guys, Eric here out at the Don Law Golf Academy, and in today's video we're going to talk about shallowing the shaft like the pros, what I think is one of the most important parts to the golf swing. I'm going to show you what shallowing the shaft is, show you the two most important checkpoints, 3 of the moves that are really important to hit those checkpoints, and the one big drill that I want you to do at the end. As you guys are watching this video, if you do like it, do us a favor, click that like button down below, that gray thumbs up really helps us out, would appreciate that. So shallowing the shaft, why don't we define what shallowing the shaft is? You're gonna see some videos on the screen of a couple models that we used to show this, but the baseline idea is what good golfers do to start the downswing is they shallow the shaft. And what that means, if you look at the shaft at the top of the backswing, you'll see in these pictures how the club head and this upper part of the shaft slowly starts to fall back behind them as their body opens up during the downswing. So the club head works back behind them. I can think of like 2 examples of really good players out of like thousands, right? 99.9%, the club head falls slightly behind them. 0.1, right, or 0.01% does the shaft get more vertical. We want to get the club head more behind us so we get all the good things, swing from inside, have freedom of pivot, etc. We'll actually link at the end of this video a video we did with John talking about why it's so important to shallow the shaft, but getting the club head to fall behind us. Now, when I'm looking at swings from down the line and like what's shallow, what's too shallow, I think there's 2 really good checkpoints to look for. We'll also include those on the screen. One of them is going to be at left arm parallel during the downswing. So like, hey, what is shallow enough? When I go to the top and I get back down to left arm parallel and we look at the actual angle of the shaft, I think there's 2 ways to look at this. One would be where the butt of the club points relative to the ball target line. If I have a shallow shaft, the butt of the club should point right on the ball target line or just slightly outside of the ball target line. Whereas a steep shaft, the butt of the club would point too far inside. Why you don't want a steep shaft here is because when the shaft gets steep like this, you're gonna have to compromise your body motions to shallow that out. Usually that means early extension, no rotation, right? Lots of different tilting at the bottom, low point control issues, consistency issues. So when we get the shaft on this angle where it points right at the baseline, we've got, or even slightly below that, even so the outside the baseline, we've got complete freedom to have perfect body motions through impact, which we all want. The second checkpoint that I would look at is when the club gets parallel to the ground. Now really where you want it is the club head probably just slightly inside the hands here. Again, we'll show a couple models on the screen. That would be a nice shallow shaft. If the club head gets outside the hands, especially too far outside the hands, that's going to be too steep and across, pulls, fades. We want the club head just inside. So if you've got a mirror or video behind you, what you want to be doing, and we'll talk about how to feel this, but you want to get the butt of the club on or outside the ball line. The shaft here would be underneath your shoulder. So it can ride through the middle to upper part of your bicep. and then the club head's inside your hands, impact. Those would be the rehearsals I'd be doing. Up to the top, the shaft, the upper part of the shaft, and feeling this balance point of the shaft up here. I want to feel that club head and that upper part of the shaft ball behind. The shaft is under my shoulder, butt of the club out or outside ball line, and then just inside my hands to impact. Now, there's a couple pieces that are going to influence that shaft motion. One of them is my shoulders, right? My shoulder alignments. And so a key principle that we talked in another video here is having the right elbow and right arm underneath the left. So when I come down, if I want to shallow my shaft, my right elbow, if you look from down the line here, should be lower, closer to the ground than my left. If my right elbow gets above my left, the shaft gets steep. Right elbow below my left, that's shallow. And that happens from a combination of trail shoulder, right shoulder external rotation, that'd be elbow down, humerus or bicep more in front of me, and lead arm internal rotation, which is my elbow more away from me. Both of those motions, a combination of those motions, will get my right elbow underneath my left. External rotation, trail shoulder, internal lead shoulder. That's an important one. That's one piece. The second thing that I would look at would be wrist angles. When I start my downswing, the more that I twist the face, the more that I add bow to my left wrist, or I add extension to my right wrist, or bend my right wrist back, that will also act to shallow the shaft. So when I come down, if I get my right elbow underneath my left with my wrist angles, those will be two pieces together. So increasing either bow, right, my knuckles farther away from my arm, or my extending my right wrist on the way back. Both of those pieces are going to help the club head fall more behind me during my downswing. So the trail elbow under the lead elbow, right arm under the left. We have the wrist angles, and the last part that I would look at is what we would call arm rotation, right, or forearm rotation. So that would be if I took my thumb straight up and put my left palm down towards the ground, that would be pronation of my left arm. Or if I took my right hand and went a little bit more palm up, that'd be supination. That motion, if I have the shaft in there, will also help get the club head behind. Now, you don't necessarily have to do all three or any of these, but if the shaft's getting too steep, these are the pieces that you want to look at. So from the top, the right elbow, let's get normal here. From the top, the right elbow gets underneath the left, will help shallow the shaft. These are good things. The wrist angle, so left wrist bowing, right wrist extending will help. And or a little bit of arm rotation. So your thumbs, let's say when you come down, get your thumbs pointed more behind you versus towards the sky. If your thumbs point towards the sky, that's going to be too steep. The thumbs will point a little bit behind you. Now, as you're doing all these shallow motions, two key considerations. One is, the more I do all this, the more the face wants to get open. So I have to make sure either my grip is strong enough or I'm really adding in those wrist angles. When I add those wrist angles, that's going to help close the face. If I really get my right arm under my left, the toe wants to get behind the heel, I've got to add those wrist angles in to square that club face up. So I look at those three motions to start with to hit those two main checkpoints. Now, the club face is a caveat. The other thing I would look at would be my lead shoulder. So when I'm doing all these pieces, I'm not getting my right arm under my left by going like this. Right, my left shoulder's not coming way up in the air. My left shoulder stays down and my right elbow's underneath my left. My left shoulder stays down, right elbow underneath my left. So those pieces you're working in have to go along with the shoulder tilt and the left shoulder staying down in transition. Let's talk about our main drill here. All right, so the main drill that we like to use for feedback includes two of these sticks here. Now, the overwhelming thing that I would do here, or in terms of practicing this, would be utilizing video from down the line. So you can check your shaft against those alignments. Do I have the butt of the club at or outside the ball line at left arm parallel? Is the club head inside my hands at last parallel? I'd be really checking those with video feedback. The how I'd be doing those is the right elbow underneath the left, the wrist angles, and the arm rotation, right? All else equal, that's how I would be manipulating that or manually doing that. But I also really like to have a feedback station in here, something in my way that I can also gather some feels as I'm practicing. This is our core fundamental plane station we use all the time for this. So there's two sticks, one of them's angled in the ground. If we look at it from face on, I like to put that in the ground where it's about halfway. So let me backtrack. I take my setup, I put the club parallel to the ground like a takeaway, and I like to put the shaft about halfway to 3/4 of the way down the shaft. So that's how far back it is. Like, it's not even with my hands, right? And then from the down the line angle, when I pose the club parallel to the ground, I put it right over my toe line. You notice I give myself there maybe 2 to 3 inches, 3-4 inches max. So this is where I'd start. Now you can put a head cover, something on top of this if you're a little nervous with this is fine. But I want to learn how to get the club working underneath this. If I can get the club underneath the shaft, it really helps hit that bottom checkpoint where the club's just inside my hands. Which, speaking of that checkpoint, we have another stick on the ground. That one we have it over 4 o'clock. So 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, and that's 4 o'clock, right? This is one I saw from George Gankis back in the day. It works really, really good as an indicator for where the shaft should work into the ball as an exaggeration. So we want the shaft to come right inside my hands over my toe line, which is really just below 3 o'clock. But if you're normally steep and you add in body rotation, you want to feel like the shaft is more over 4 o'clock. As I really turn my body and I swing, which won't be as exaggerated as I feel, I want to feel it over 4 so that it's just inside of 3. So this is the station we use here. So stick angle on the ground. Now here's my ball target line, guys. I have that probably a little under a foot outside the ball target line. You could have it a little closer, angle it higher, have it a little farther away. There's no magic to exactly where it is there. The magic is the stick should be 2 to 3 inches above when I pose it here and then the 4 o'clock. So what I want to be doing is recording myself from down the line. I'm working on shallowing the downswing. I'm going to go up to the top of my swing. I'm going to feel it left arm parallel. Again, let's say I'm working on with my coach right elbow underneath my left. So I'm feeling my right arm underneath my left with a little bit of wrist action, and I'm feeling the club over 4 into the ball. And I want to start to hit some shots here with the station in. Now I've got a 7-iron. If you're steep normally, you probably want to start here with a short iron, like half swings, right? Go slow, work your way in this. In fact, I'd probably start with like a pitching wedge at like 50 yards, okay? Especially if you've been steep for a while. So I'm going to go up here, feel the right elbow underneath the left, the shaft working inside 4 o'clock. Right elbow underneath my left, a little bit of the wrist angles. Good. And for me, who comes inside normally, this is a little bit exaggerated, right? I actually need a little bit of the opposite. But so for me, I'm going to hit some little hooks with this, which if you're normally over the top and you hit pulls and fades, you should be loving that, right? That should be a good thing. So again, from here, right elbow's underneath the left from down the line, and I'm twisting the back of my hand and my right palm more towards the camera, shaft over 4 into the ball. I like to do 1 or 2 rehearsals and then hit one. And again, I'm recording this to check from down the line. Yeah, that was really nice. That was the best one of the day. So I wanted to provide you guys with some options here, right? It's not correct to say, hey, you have to feel these wrist angles, you have to feel the right arm underneath the left, you have to feel the forearm rotation. I'd say you can work within any of those depending upon where you are at the top. It's not correct or incorrect to feel left arm or right. You do either or both, but the checkpoints are the goal. Those checkpoints will live on forever. So record yourself from down the line. The pros shallow the shaft like that. You can do the same thing. We're going to put another card on the screen here of a similar video where I talk about shallowing the downswing drills and feels like this. If you want to check out CogornoGolf.com, we'll put that logo on the screen. Remember, 30-day money-back guarantee, absolutely no risk. Send your swings and we build you a practice plan. Would love to work with you.